Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. A new study called Overcharged Expectations from the Texas Public Policy Foundation claims that without federal subsidies, the real cost of fueling an electric vehicle would amount to $17.33 per gallon of gasoline. This is because of the wide array of direct subsidies, regulatory credits, and subsidized infrastructure that contributes to the economic viability of EVs. And these estimates do not include the hundreds of billions more in subsidies in the Inflation Reduction Act. So this study has shed some light on the reality of owning an electric vehicle. Without the government subsidies, the amount you pay for in electricity for what would be equivalent of 1 gallon of gas, the amount of energy you would get equivalent to 1 gallon of gas, instead of costing you, $3 to $4, which it is now, which is already high for the price of a gallon of gasoline. That's about the country's average. Instead of $3 to $4, you'll be paying $17.33 for the same amount of distance you'd be able to go. That is insane, and it's totally unviable. People cannot afford to pay $17 in gas. And what happens when more and more people end up using electric vehicles? When the demand grows exponentially for energy? Well, the price is going to go up even more. So this is another instance of the government starting a program and sustaining it, even though it's not viable on its own. We pour billions of dollars into the EV programs. And I'm not saying against electric vehicles in concept, but the way the government is handling this topic of regulating it to death, trying to ban gasoline-powered cars, and trying to do that in either this decade or in the next decade, trying to do that as soon as possible. They're trying to ruin the auto industry. They're basically trying to force Americans to pay for very expensive electric vehicles and then pay even more for the electricity to run those vehicles. Regardless of if they have access to the infrastructure, if they have the finances to do so, the government is just going to say you have to do it. And the thing about America is you don't have a choice. This is a country that is incredibly car-based, and we have an incredibly fast-paced moving society. So our reliance on cars is immense in America, and it's irreplaceable. And so people will have to comply. But this goes to show, this is the reality of the situation. If the government ever stopped funding it, which they probably will. Imagine when everybody has an EV. The government's not going to be able to pay for all of that. All that money coming from taxpayers to pay for other taxpayers to enjoy their EVs. It's not going to happen. Right now, because it's a small minority, the government's willing to shift billions of dollars into it. But when everybody has to pay, everyone's going to have to pay. And you will be paying at least $17, apparently. And this isn't the only reason that electric cars are not viable on a mass scale for this country. We don't have the electric grid to sustain this. A lot of people don't have a place to charge their vehicle, and they say, oh, we'll just buy a charger to have at night. Well, how many people live in apartments? How many people don't have a garage? It's a significant amount of people in this country, even though they own a house, don't have a totally sealed in garage. And so what? Now people are going to have to build a garage in order to put in their supercharger, in order to charge their electric vehicle? None of which they wanted, but now out of the necessity of how our society is structured, they have to do so under the government's orders, basically limiting their options to one. So this is something that I hope is spread around more, because we can't have this in this country. We can't be strong-arming people into doing what the government sees as right, especially when it's not viable. It's not possible. People are already suffering economically, and this is just going to add even more strain to that. That's the reality of the situation. So make sure you spread this around and look at your political candidates and where they stand on, do they want to force every American citizen to purchase an electric vehicle in the near future? Are they going to ban the production of gasoline cars? Are they going to actually build the infrastructure necessary for electric vehicles? Or do they want to rely on our current grid and the current amount of superchargers we have? Because there's not enough. If every person has to charge their car every night, or at least once a week, there's not going to be enough charging stations, especially not in apartment complexes, not at supermarkets. The lines would be unimaginably long. And so we need more infrastructure if we want to make this a reality. But will the government invest in something before they decree you have to do it? Well, historically, no. Historically, the government makes a decision and then decides to clean up that mess later. And that's what they're doing. They're shifting the burden of what they deem to be morally correct onto you. They're shifting the price onto you. So as we have more elections coming up, this is a good thing to keep in mind. Another issue that should tip the scales for you on who you decide to vote for. and what direction you want this country to go in. If you think electric vehicles are a good idea, if you like the implementation of restrictions, if you think we should have less restrictions, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.